Oh, so this is my spring-powered unicycle. I use it to travel the world and find stuff. It's not the most powerful thing in the universe, but it's quite fast, or at least a lot faster than other non-gas using vehicles. And it's probably better than a controller powered vehicle, as it is said much faster. Doesn't have the same torque though, but that could be fixed with more springs or something like that. So in this video I'm gonna go through all the glitches and how I control them with the sensors. So let's just jump right into that. So this is the walkthrough of how this thing works. For steering I'm using a simple suspension glitch. It's been used quite a lot before. The way it works is you connect your steering to each end of a bearing that's connected to a spring. I've seen quite a lot of YouTubers and stuff like that doing it like this, where you have a single hinge or single bearing in the back and then building around it to get it blocked off. Let's see here. They put one block in front and then block it in on the sides to prevent it from moving and getting the suspension glitch. This is the old way I showed a few years ago, I think. It works, does, but it has a few problems. One is that if you hit it hard enough, that block might go through one of the other blocks and it breaks basically. So to get this working better, you can, instead of doing it like this, you can put a bearing in front as well and then connecting both of them together. To do this you actually have to have it on a lift. You can't connect it to a bearing and the spring at the same time without connecting, having it on the lift. That way it's basically solid state and can't break, and it's also a lot stronger, especially if you connect both of the bearings to the seat or whatever you want to control it with. Let's see. So that's the steering. And to get the balancing, I'm using a weaker but cheaper system than usual. This is the normal way I would have done it, but because controllers and springs and stuff like that is quite expensive in this game and it takes a lot more space, I'm doing it this way. This way is much faster. It's you will see that as soon as I walk into the sensor you will see it start moving much faster, but it's not nearly as strong as that way. I will go through that one afterwards and tell you how it works, well, better. As you can see, it's really fast, but it's not strong. That meaning a vehicle of this size is its limits. I can actually tip this over by just driving it. So I kind of have to be a bit careful when I move it around. Of course I can get it back up on its wheel. Yeah, wherever. So it's a cheaper way of doing it, but it's much weaker than the normal way I would use suspension glitches. And how this is done is without controllers at all. You just connect one sensor to one end, or one piston on the one side and the other to the other side, and then they are connected together with a spring in between. So how this actually works is quite like this, where you have two bearings. It uses the pistons instead of the bearings to push on one side and getting the effect of it turning around. And this would probably be really good for auto turrets and stuff like that when we get far enough in survival. that will probably be a thing. But for vehicles it's a bit weak. It works on my vehicle because I don't often take sharp turns and stuff like that, but yeah, I would probably go for the other solution, at least on a vehicle this large. Because this system is much stronger, but slower. And the slowness is actually kind of good for vehicles because the suspension glitches on both of these also help with stability. It kind of adds some kind of force. I don't know how to explain this, but it prevents the vehicle from tipping over, so it gets slower. It moves, it tips over slower in all axes, or well, in 2 of the 3 axes. So if you think of it like a rod going through the spring, it will prevent rotation in all other directions than it's spinning that way. So it will freely rotate that way, which I probably can do by just putting up on a lift. If I put this leg longer, you will see it tipping over quite easily. See that? If I do that the other way, or one of the other ways, it doesn't actually matter, it will actually prevent itself from tipping. It won't stop it completely, but it will slow it down. So if I now drop it, you can see it's really going slowly that way. Might actually do some more on the sides to prevent it from rolling over. So it adds kind of a slowness to the rotation. Actually, it has stopped now, but that's because scrap mechanic is stupid and stops, well, physics sometimes. And the same goes for this one. It prevents rotation in all other directions than around this rod. So the third one I actually use on this creation is that one. It is connected to its to a sensor. This one is not to its own, but it doesn't matter. It's just 180 degree rotation of to, where is my little thing? Has it escaped me? No, there it is. It's 2 bearings connected together with a rod in between. Do I not have my welding tool? Oh. So I welded those together, and as you can see, when I drop it, it will rotate. Important thing here is to have 2 of them, because if you only have one, it will rotate the whole creation in the opposite way of what it's rotating. So these 2 are counteracting each other when they set. Doesn't matter afterwards, but when you spawn the vehicle or take it off the lift, both of them have to rotate 180 degrees, and that will rotate the whole thing if you don't have 2 that goes the opposite ways. And it's set up basically like this. Doesn't matter how fast this is, as long as you have 2 of them going the opposite directions. And what this does is the same as the spring glitch without movement, meaning that it prevents rotation. But it's much cheaper, both in lag, as frame rates and stuff like that, than using the suspension glitch. And if this is free moving, you can see it also acts around its axis. So that one is free spinning. So it can rotate, but it can't tip over easily. So what I'm using them for on this creation is to slow down all reactions. So seeing as I'm using this kind of setup, I don't want my vehicle to move like this. I want it to move slowly. So if I actually, well, I can't, but if I had those on this one, not vertical, but in any other direction, it would slow it down. Hope that makes sense. So every one of these glitches will prevent rotation in 2 of its 3 axes. And the axis it won't prevent rotation in is the one kind of, you might think of it as pointing in the direction it won't prevent rotation. So seeing as the spring is going that way, it will not prevent rotation around this axis. Same goes for this one, which has now glitched out, but whatever. So if I remove the leg again, like that, it will prevent rotation in all other directions than this one. If one of these springs had been set at 90 degrees of the other one, let's see if we can fix that. We can probably do that easily. 4 like that. Oh yeah, that's not gonna work because it's not on the lift. So now I'm connecting it to itself and to that one and that one, and that didn't work. Why aren't you? Ah, because it's a level 1. 60. You can now see it's working again, but now it prevents rotation in all axes. So this spring will let it rotate in those direction, or in that direction, but not in this direction or in this direction. But this spring will prevent this rotation, and that spring will prevent this rotation. So no matter how I put this or how misaligned I will do the legs, it will prevent itself from rotating in all directions now. I hope you could see that. It's kind of weak when it's so heavy. Let's see. Trying that again. Yeah, you can see that. So now it prevents rotation in all directions. So that is how the most used glitches, well, the glitches I use the most is functioning. By the way, the wheel on this one, the reason I used a double wheel is so I could take them 45 degrees off each other to get as round as possible, seeing as I'm using blocks for wheels. So that's the complete explanation of this vehicle, and that thing is a future project. Bye bye.